Chapter 1, The Whisper. You've always heard you felt it, haven't you? That strange, soft ache, like remembering a dream you were never taught. A longing not for a place you visited, but a place your soul remembers. Some call it déjà vu, others a passing fantasy. But those of us who walk through life sensing something just beyond the veil, we know it's more than that. The first time I heard the name Atlantis, I didn't hear it. I felt it. It wasn't just a word. It was a vibration, a jolt through the chest, a recognition, like the echo of a name someone once called me by, lifetimes ago. And yet, from the very beginning, we're told not to believe. Atlantis, they say, belongs on the same shelf as unicorns, fairy tales, and pirate maps. A story, not a truth. A curiosity, not a calling. But here's the question I invite you to sit with, and not just intellectually, but with your heart. What if they lied? What if Atlantis was never a myth, but a memory? What if it wasn't lost to the ocean, but buried in you? Let's be honest, if something wasn't dangerous to power, would it be erased so completely? Because this isn't just about an ancient civilization. This is about you. It's about the version of you that existed before this one, before you learned to fit into a world that asked you to forget, before you traded your knowing for noise, your intuition for instruction, your soul for structure. Atlantis is more than a city. It is the mirror we refuse to look into. Because if we did, if we really remembered what we were once capable of, the entire system would crack. So no, this won't be a history lesson. This will be a remembrance. And like all powerful remembrances, it begins with a whisper, one you've heard before. Maybe in your dreams, maybe in a meditation, maybe in the strange, sudden knowing that the world you're living in isn't the first version of advanced civilization, but one of its echoes. You're not here by accident. You didn't stumble on this message. You answered it. Chapter 2. Was it ever lost? Most of us were introduced to Atlantis through Plato, the great Greek philosopher. In his dialogues Timaeus and Critias, he describes an extraordinary land beyond the Pillars of Heracles, a place more advanced than any of the known world, rich in technology, philosophy, and spiritual balance. But Plato didn't claim to invent the tale. He said it was passed down through Egyptian priests to Solon, a wise lawmaker from Athens. This wasn't hearsay. This was memory preserved. Plato gave precise details: geography, politics, city structure, even the values the Atlanteans lived by. Why would one of the greatest minds of antiquity go to such trouble for a simple allegory? And more importantly, why did later scholars work so hard to dismiss it? We forget that ancient wisdom often came encoded, hidden not because it was fiction, but because it was dangerous to power. And in that, Plato may have been our first modern whistleblower. He described Atlantis as a society built on divine harmony, a balance between material life and spiritual understanding. But it was that very balance that, when lost, became its undoing. Not external enemies, not natural disaster, but internal corruption. Ego overtook wisdom, greed replaced virtue, and the fall was inevitable. It's not just history, it's a warning. Chapter 3 echoes around the world. If Atlantis were just a Greek myth, how do we explain the strikingly similar stories and cultures across the world? The Maya spoke of Aslan, a luminous land that disappeared beneath the sea. In Tamil lore, there's Kumari Kandam, a technologically advanced civilization swallowed by the ocean. Indigenous Pacific Islanders speak of Lemuria, a once vast continent lost to time. Even Egyptian texts whisper of a forgotten golden age before the pharaohs. These aren't coincidences, they are fragments. Fragments of something we all once knew, scattered through time, hidden in the hushed tones of elders and the dreams of mystics. We call them myths, but they are more like memories in disguise, encoded in the DNA of humanity, preserved in symbols, carried in song. And when you listen closely, when you read between the ruins, you realize they all share the same pattern: a civilization in harmony, a fall caused not by nature, but by human error, and a knowing that such heights can be reached again. These stories were not meant to entertain, they were meant to remind. Chapter 4. A Technology of the Soul. We've been taught to see technology as cold, mechanical, made of wires, steel, and algorithms. But the technology of Atlantis was not something external. It was energetic. It was built to align, not to dominate. It was not something you used. It was something you tuned into. Imagine a city where energy wasn't extracted by force, but channeled by intention, where crystals served not as ornaments, but as conscious tools for healing and energy transmission, where sound, sacred sound, was the main interface between spirit and matter. In Atlantean science, a pyramid was not a tomb. It was a power station. An obelisk was not a monument. It was a tuning fork. Temples acted as frequency chambers, singing, resonating, healing. They understood what modern quantum physics is only beginning to grasp, that everything is vibration, and by working with those vibrations, intentionally, responsibly, they were able to evolve far beyond what we think is possible. But here's the tragedy. When their spiritual alignment faltered, the same tools that uplifted them became their undoing. Chapter 5. The Fall of Alignment. The Atlanteans didn't fall because of a comet or tsunami. They fell because they forgot who they were. They began to force energy rather than flow with it. They turned their sacred technologies toward control. They started to believe they were above the laws of the universe, and the earth responded, not in rage, but in balance. The fall of Atlantis is not a punishment story. It is a mirror for what happens when humanity trades truth for power, connection for dominance. Look around. Doesn't it feel familiar? We have smartphones but shrinking attention spans. We control atoms but not our emotions. We harvest data but forget empathy. Like Atlantis, we are advanced on the outside and increasingly empty on the inside. This isn't ancient history, it's now. Chapter 6. Memory and Exile. After Atlantis fell, not all was lost. Some survived, and they carried the memory with them. Not in books, but in symbols, geometry, temples. They planted seeds in Egypt, in the Andes, in Tibet, in the mystery schools of Greece. They encoded wisdom into myths and monuments. Not to hide it forever, but to protect it until humanity was ready to remember. The pyramids, the chants, the symbols you're drawn to but can't explain. That's not coincidence. That's resonance. And when you begin to follow those threads, not with logic, but with intuition, you unlock the door to everything they left behind, to everything you were never meant to forget.